From LPM,
Louisville Public Media.
Support for LPM podcasts comes from the Eye Care Institute and Butchertown Clinical Trials, where they strive for diversity, equity, and inclusion within their staff, patients, and clinical trial participants. To learn more, visit butchertown.clinic.
I'm Michelle Tyreen Johnson. Welcome to Race Unwrapped, a podcast unwrapping all the ways race affects our world, whether we're thinking about it or not. This season, we're talking about race and comedy. And to kick things off, my guest is Rain Pryor, an actress, director, and comedian, and the daughter of the late, great goat of comedy, Richard Pryor. Rain and I talk about the comedic legacy of her father and the deft and brilliant way he used humor and comedy to keep it raw and keep it real. And by the way, we'll play some of his comedy, and in case you have never heard it before, that means this episode is going to have some very adult language in it. Don't say we didn't warn you. This is Race Unwrapped. I'm Michelle Tyreen Johnson, and my guest this episode is Rain Pryor. She's an award-winning actress, comedian, author, and jazz singer. You've seen her in TV shows like Head of the Class and Rude Awakenings. She's played both Billie Holiday and Ella Fitzgerald on stage. She wrote a memoir called Jokes My Father Never Taught Me, and her one-woman show, Fried Chicken and Latkes, explores her childhood growing up biracial and Jewish in the 1960s and 70s. Oh, and her dad was pretty accomplished, too. I mean, I already know who you are, magnificent woman, but could you tell who you are?
I'm Rain Pryor. I'm an actress, I'm a director, I'm a script writer, and my dad was like the famous comedian Richard Pryor.
Richard Pryor. Oh, man, I thought you were Gene Wilder's daughter. Never mind. No, I'm just kidding.
Hey, it could be. You never know.
Oh, my goodness. So I'm so excited because this season we're talking about, I'm talking with all these fabulous guests about race and humor, also race and comedy. And in your book that I am not finished reading, but which I am loving, where you talk about your relationship with your father and the lessons you learned, I mean, you basically say it. You, in the book, let me find it. You say, you write, my daddy didn't just tell jokes. He told funny stories that dug for deeper truths.
Yes.
And what's really fascinating, I'm just going to jump right up into this.
Jump on in. Let's go.
Just jump right into it, is that, you know, I forgot how close in age we are. We're both in our 50s. And because in my mind, you're forever 30 something. So
in my mind too. Thank you so much.
Right. And so we have a whole lot of the same reference points for the world at large. And I forget that your father did not start off being the kind of comedian that he was. That he started off more a la Bill Cosby.
Well, he really started off as a cabaret singer and then told a joke and people laughed, and that became like the trajectory of where he was going. And he did the family-friendly comedy until somebody said, my dog is like, blah, blah, blah. Until somebody was like, no, like you need to speak your truth. You have value, because amongst his friends, which happened to be Huey P. Newton, his friends, he was an activist. He was a politician in his own way. And they're like, this is the stuff you need to be saying on stage.
And boy, when he made that switch, didn't he? And what's interesting is I was going to ask the question, but then reading your book sort of answered the question. I was going to ask the question, what was it like for your father to go in this whole different way in which he viewed black people than Bill Cosby did? Because, you know, Bill Cosby, his humor, especially in the later years before, you know.
Well, his comedy was very mainstream, right? For the time, Cosby's was mainstream and very acceptable, palatable to whites. And my dad gave 0 Fs about it.
Yes.
Like, he didn't care. He was like, I'm just going to be my black self.
Exactly. But it wasn't even just mainstream, but Cosby liked to talk down to black people, like the famous, like pound. And your father never did that.
No, because he was a black person. Like he was a black person that grew up in a brothel. There's no hiding that. Do you know what I mean?
Yep,
Like
yep,
we all know that, in our family. It's
yep.
like when people go, "What is your fondest memory?" My brother will say, "Oh, hookers in the house," because that's how we grew up. Like, no one was better than you are from where you came from, if that makes sense. Because we all started off like here, and then my dad went up here, didn't make him better than.
Right. I mean, and that makes perfect sense to me. But
Right.
again, you have the people who want to go for, let's just call it what it is, respectability politics.
Yes,
And
yes.
your dad, I mean, I forgot.
He didn't care.
He
He
didn't
didn't
care.
care.
He didn't care. And
Mhm,
I didn't
mhm.
remember. I didn't remember until I started re-listening to his comedy. Like
Right.
I didn't. I had forgotten that how irreverent, like so irreverent, which gets back to the
Yeah,
whole theme of talking about race and comedy or race and humor.
right.
What are your thoughts on how to best use humor to make a point about race?
I think when you speak from a place of truth, again, when you speak from a place of truth and you can point out the absurdity in racism, the absurdity in supremacy, people are going to laugh because when we can see ourselves, we laugh at ourselves, right? When I'm trying to lecture you, you don't laugh. But when I say that white dude on the corner and that black, right, you're going to laugh because then you're with me.
What the great Gordon Parks, um, photographer, Renaissance man, fellow Black Kansan, because I'm a Kansan. That's where we met the first time a jillion years ago.
Yep.
He talked about how his camera was a choice of weapons to fight
Right.
against all the ills of bigotry in our society and having what a
Right.
Black man had to face. Do you feel as if your father looked at comedy that way?
I think he just looked at it, that's who he was. He was a black man in America, and he was a black man that's post slavery, post civil rights movement, and knew what his grandparents and parents had to do in order for him to have a morsel of food. So there was no mix up about who he was in America's eyes, especially when it came to white supremacy and all that. And I think that got passed down to us as his kids because even my show talked about race. The stuff I'm writing about talks about race. It's like how do we bridge communities? How and my dad was about that. He was about how do I elevate myself without selling myself out? How do I stay a black man in America and be a down black man in America without selling myself out? He never viewed marrying white women because he did. My mother's white, my sister's mother's white, his widow, whatever, was white. He never viewed, oh, it's a white person in that sense. He viewed it as an opportunity to change the thinking of America. I'm going to do what I want because I'm a powerful black man. Not that I'm doing this to move up in the world, because
Right.
it was at a time that wouldn't have been. Like now you question it sometimes, we do. I find in our groups, we do that, right? We go, well, why did so and so marry him? Why did the marry her?
Right.
Was he trying to get up?
Yeah, we
And
still we still have those conversations. Yep.
right, and we have to face colorism because that is a real subject within our own community. But my dad, because of being a black man that grew up in that era, was not afraid to address it, was not afraid to talk about it. As in today's society, I think we're more resistant.
Exactly. We are, which is why I just feel that this topic is so important because I feel like comedy is the way we as Black people sneak in the real truths. And your
Right.
daddy was doing that before anybody today.
Yes.
You know what I'm
Yes,
saying?
he
He
was.
was he was the architect of how you say something really and then be like, you know.
Right, right.
I and then and I love how when I'm watching some of his live stand up and you see the people in the audience and Black people are there with him before he even finishes the joke half the time.
Right.
You
Because
know,
we lived it, right? Because that era lived it. So he's just telling the rest of the world, this is how we lived it, and they're able to laugh at themselves. I think that's what, to me, great comedy isn't a separation. Great comedy is a bringing together. So if I can talk about the black experience and have a white person laugh, then I've done my job. But it's not my job to make them laugh to agree or to assimilate. That was the difference. Dad made everybody, brown, black, yellow, green, blue, laugh and understand because his subjects also were universal.
Yes, yes, yes.
And I think when you talk about even race in America in general, I think we have such a bizarre construct of it and the way we approach it. Like oftentimes, and this is not going to be agreeable, but I'm just sharing with you that I think oftentimes I wonder if, as someone who's considered a liberal,
Right.
I wonder if if liberals truly were infiltrated by white supremacy in order to make it what it is today and why we're having all of this. Because I'm like, this is not the path we should be on. Like, we should be able to speak our minds, to speak our truth, to call the kettle black if it's black and not have to mince words and dance around a subject, because then how do we fully grow and understand one another and integrate as a society, not racially, but integrate as a society so we can survive?
I totally get that, and that's one of the big questions I wanted to ask you because
Yes, please.
I look at your dad's trajectory of his career, and in some ways, all of his accolades and awards came after the authenticity. It's almost like he snuck in, and then once he's in, it's like bam. And
Right.
once he was just, I mean, because he let the N word, the actual word, flow freely. I mean, his Grammy award
and
win.
and had a revelation about it. Not only did he let it flow freely, when he went to the continent and he saw nothing but himself on money and actual met kings and queens and leaders, he knew then that that word could no longer apply to himself and others. Because it
Mm.
was no longer like the neighborhood thing. Like we grew up, it was just a saying in the family, right? It was like every word was, what that,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then he realized, oh, because he knew enough about himself and American history to understand the evolution of the N word
Mm-hmm.
and that it wasn't empowering, but it created a disadvantage because it created a disadvantage.
So had he reached that, like when he has the album? Because I can say it because it's a podcast,
That nigga's crazy.
right, and I just won an award for a whole episode about the N word. So I think it's safe to say I can say the word nigga on my own podcast now. But that nigga's crazy. Had
Yeah.
he had he had that revelation before or after that album?
What year? I forget what year that nigger crazy was in.
1974.
No, it was after that because it was
Okay.
around 1979
Okay.
that dad went to Zimbabwe, met, what was his name, who was leading at the time. It'll
Girl,
it'll
don't
get in my head.
don't
But
ask
anyway,
don't ask me. History is not my
I know,
friend.
right? But Mugabe, and they became friends, and then seeing himself, like I said, projected back to him, and people thriving, living in villages, doing well, families together, it just changed his whole, like his mind literally was blown.
Hmm.
Same happened for me when I went to, Nigeria. It was like, oh, nobody's looking around for the cops.
It is very different. It is.
You
It is very different. Well, let me ask you this. Because you got his album "That Nigga's Crazy" in '74.
Yes. Spicy
Then
Stunning on Nigger.
then it's something I said.
Hmm.
Which had him, on the album. I love that album cover where he's like the Klan
Right.
with their pitchforks and their torches are standing there. Do you think that could happen today? Do you think that album cover? Do you think that title of that other album, do you think that could happen today based on your knowledge? Because you're still in the industry. So do you think that could happen
No,
today?
no, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And that's because supremacy has taken over. Supremacy has infiltrated in a way, to me, that says we can't talk about that. We can't say the N-word. We can't say that we're black. We can't say that we're mixed. We can't say that we have natural hair. We can't say someone's gay, straight, them, they, those. Like, everything to me has become this new construct, and we have allowed supremacy, to me, to hijack the word woke. When we've been talking about woke since when I was a kid, 73, 72.
Exactly.
I
Right.
mean, I was around the most woke black men in history. My father, Huey P. Newton, it was just like, I don't even think Spike Lee's movies could fly as well. I think there's something we crave. I think the closest artist we have to that, to me, is Donald Glover. Yeah,
Mm.
because he's really trying to kind of push that envelope and talk about it. But again, we're in this construct right now that's, ooh, be careful.
Right.
Even my show, Fried Chicken and Latkes, I created it as a series before the strike hit. We were in the process of trying to sell it, and it was really interesting. The feedback's like, "Oh, this is so great," and I'm not sure, because I'm not afraid, because that's how I was raised, to talk about it. I'm not afraid to talk about the little girl that was called,
Mm-hmm.
a nigga.
Right.
Let's talk
Exactly.
about it. Let's work it out.
Yeah, and that gets me exactly. And your father, what he is will always be infamous for, is that there was nothing that was too irreverent for him to. I mean, I listen, and it's funny because my 2023 sensibilities listen, and he's talking about like sex, like getting real raunchy with it,
Right, right.
race, religion. I
Yeah.
mean, he talked about his sexual proclivities, which just weren't for women, about women.
No,
Like he
no,
he was
no.
he was open about it all, and I was like, it really makes me
He
wonder.
was talking to me. He was talking like, men when we're not in the room talk. That's how I look at how Daddy saw things, and because of how he was raised and what he was around. The sexual violence, the prostitution. Uncle Dickie was a pimp. Mama ran the brothel. Or
Yeah,
Daddy would put the whorehouse. I knew who the hookers were. My brother knew who the hookers were. My sister knew who the hookers were. Some, eventually some became wives. I mean, that's just how it rolled in the Pryor household. So when it came to things, my dad did not hold back. He didn't have that censure in himself,
yeah,
because it was almost, it was pre, obviously, the internet, where things escape. So he was like, I'd rather just let you know before
mm,
somebody else is going to tell you. Let it come from my mouth.
exactly, exactly. Let me ask you this: do you think
Yes.
in today's day and age that Richard Pryor would identify as queer?
No, because my dad was like, why put a damn label on me? Tomorrow I might be straight. Tomorrow I might be this. Tomorrow I might be that. Tomorrow I might be bi. Tomorrow I might, do you know what I mean? So his
Yes.
idea of even a label in and of itself was ridiculous.
Yeah, yeah, and he was
He
someone who
was
defied
he
him.
was like, does it matter? I live in he would probably would say, does it matter? I'm living in my big house, driving my nice car, you know,
Right, right.
getting it when I want it. What's the problem?
Exact. I mean, that is what I found and still find so fascinating. And it's almost like him and Red Fox did the opposite trajectory. Like Red
Right,
Fox started off just raw with it, just whatever I
right,
got to
right,
say,
right.
and then goes to the Red Fox show and more of a respectability, mainstream prime
But that's what
time.
mainstream is, right? When we say mainstream, it's a watered down version of who we are and what we are. And I think it's going to take a whole in this time, it's going to take a whole somebody who's willing to take the risk, who has the power to take the risk, that can put the stuff out there that we need to see, and not be afraid not be afraid to question. We shouldn't be afraid to get angry at people. We shouldn't be able, yeah, because that's how we have conversation and learn, right? I disagree
Yes.
with you, you disagree with me, we disagree to disagree. Sometimes we have to walk our separate ways. My thing is let them come with their hoods off. I want to know who they are.
Yes,
No,
absolutely.
I don't want to go back to putting the hoods on like we're seeing, in Washington the other day with the, whatever the Proud, but whatever they are,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
the
Right.
groups coming back. It's like, no, I liked you better when you could just say it because then I know.
I mean, and that's it, because that's what's happening now, that the conversation, instead of it becoming more free flowing, it's
Right.
become
It's stinted.
regressive.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's why I keep thinking about your father and George
Yeah.
Carlin, and
They'd be upset. I think they'd be upset
yeah, I was going to
because
ask you,
they'd be
what do
like,
you
well,
what do you
what did
think?
we fight for? What
Mm,
did we fight for? We didn't fight to be censored. We didn't fight. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
We're all stuck on gun rights, but we're losing our ability to say what we want because we're afraid to hurt somebody's feelings. Let our feelings be hurt because then I know where you stand. Call me
exactly.
a motherfucker to my face. I know I don't need to F with you.
Yes,
See,
yes,
you know what I'm
exactly,
saying?
exactly. But so here's the other thing I noticed. So I came across
Yes.
on YouTube a stand-up routine of your dad's, where he was talking about the police and chokeholds.
Police got a chokehold they use out here though, man. They choke niggas to death. That mean you be dead when they through. Right? Did you know that? Wait, the niggas going, yeah, we know wife. No, I had no idea. Yeah, two grab your legs, one grab your head, it'll snap. Oh shit, he broke. Can you break a nigger? Is it okay? Let's check the manual. Yep, page 8, you can break a nigger right there. See? Let's drag him downtown. Okay.
And I'm just like, did we learn nothing? I mean, he was talking, I mean, it was 74 that he said it, and it's going to be 2024 next year. What's that, 50 years? Okay,
Yeah.
almost 50 years. So,
And it's the same thing, right? We're
right.
still we're still killing each other and we're still allowing the institution to kill us.
Yeah, and to the point where we have, back to your point about white supremacy, a white dude who ain't even a cop, who can put somebody in a chokehold, a black
In
man
a
in a chokehold,
subway.
in a subway,
In a
because
subway.
he's
Because
annoying people.
right. And he felt okay with that, and America's okay with that. But that shows you our ignorance. It shows you our dumbing down. It shows you that we have not evolved in our consciousness. Do you know what I
I
mean?
know, I
We might
know.
know how to turn on a computer and do whatever X, Y, and Z and the A and the I, but we don't know how to communicate as human beings anymore. The first thing we do is shoot or kill. We
Ex-
don't we don't know how to be like, brother, calm down. Do you need some help? Get out of my face. There's gonna be we don't even know how to have real fights
no, no, no,
anymore. We
no.
all have to be afraid of being killed.
You're absolutely right, and it's getting worse. I
Absolutely.
mean, and the more
But it
technology it
gets
is.
worse before it gets better, right? Because
Mm,
that's the whole idea of chaos.
yes,
Right?
yes,
And the world itself, it's evolution. So it has to get out of control to find its center. We have to have these divisions on all sides of politics and whatever, and this is what my dad stood for in order to find the center again. So we're going to all go to our corners and be extreme, and then we'll trickle on back.
and I.
Our kids are doing it better, by the way.
You think so? I know you have a teen, right?
I have a 15-year-old and I watch her and her friends, black, yellow, blue, green, they, them, she, he, her, and they get it and they don't care and they are the world I want to see.
Yes.
They accept themselves for who they are. They don't care. They're like, are you nice? Are you kind? Do you
Yeah.
know what I mean? If you're
Exactly.
nasty, get away. Like I'm watching them do it going, maybe
Yeah.
maybe it's gonna be all right.
I know. I mean, but I mean, I think of that sometimes myself when I look at younger folks. I'm like, okay, there's so many of them that are getting it right. There's so
Yeah.
many of them. So, okay, one of the things I
Go ahead.
really love about Mr. Pryor, Mr. Richard
Yeah,
Pryor, is
Miss Richard
that
Pryor.
is that his humor when he talked about race wasn't
Mhm.
just about, Whitey. white man,
Not at
I mean,
all.
he had a really
Mm-mm.
incisive way of talking about how like this one joke where he says, niggas had to be home by 11, Negroes by 12, because
Right.
we knew within the race, there are these divisions within us, good or bad,
Right.
you know?
But isn't that it with everything? And that's what I said. His comedy was universal if you really listen to it. It just talked about the proclivity of man. It just was in terms of black because that's who he was,
Yes, yes, yes. So
you know?
do you think that he found solace in his humor? Did it give him comfort to joke
Abs-
about things?
Absolutely. I mean, that was his piece. When he was on stage, he was a different person. Like my dad's a quiet man. Like he was quiet, and if he was really mad at you, he was even more quiet. Like it took it down to this level,
Mm,
quiet. But on that stage, it was like something clicked, and it was a stream of consciousness at times, and sometimes it was rehearsed, and he knew he had something to say, but I don't think he knew how it would land, and I think even he was surprised at his own greatness.
yeah, yeah,
And to me that's a genius, and to me that's also a man that's on a higher vibration anyway.
yeah.
When we see those conscious brothers, right? They don't know they're conscious.
No, and if they do, if they think they are, then they're called a hotep, and that's a whole
Right.
nother conversation that we're not going to
And
go
they're
into.
smelling like Nag Champa and Egyptian musk. I know.
All right, stop it, stop it, stop it. So if your father,
Yes,
I
ma'am.
think about this with my grandmother. My grandmother just died like
I'm
7 years
sorry.
ago,
I'm
but she
sorry.
had Alzheimer's for years before that, and she was the funniest woman that I ever knew, like funniest person. I mean,
Right.
she was. People still hear me talking about my grandmother, and I go, what would she think of the world? Like if she came back just like mind right, body right, and was just looking at the world, what would she think? What do you think your father would think of the world right now?
It's fucked up.
Yeah. How do you think he would use his genius to address how fucked up the world is?
He'd be talking about, you can say you're black all you want, but have you been to the continent? Do you know who you are?
Mm, yeah.
Because I don't think we know who we are. To me, I'm telling you, there's something about going to the continent that makes you understand who you are.
It's funny because I went to West Africa for the first time in 2019, just a few months before the pandemic shut the world down. And never in both a good way and a bad way was I was I was conscious of my blackness in a positive way. I
Right,
was conscious of my Americanness in a negative way.
right.
And that's how I got dissed. It wasn't oh sister, you're
No,
home,
yeah.
you know
No, it's because you're American and you don't know who you are.
right,
And they know that.
right.
They don't question that they're black. They don't question that they're black. They're not running for something. They realize the resources they have in the continent. See, we're only given a framework here, right? Every time we're shown the continent, what do we see? Poverty,
Yeah,
distended bellies,
yeah.
starvation. There's gold, there's diamonds, there's other minerals, there's bio luminescence, there's biology that is beyond our scope, medicines, medicinals. That's why everyone from Russia to China, and the Brits came to take it over. It's
Yeah.
like there's a land, there are many kings and queens there. I met them. I went to epic weddings, that would put coming to America to shame. Like,
Yes.
I have had experiences on the continent that I'm just like, wow,
Hmm.
that's who I am.
Yeah.
That's my ancestry. That's where I came from because I happen to be Nigerian, and I also happen to be Gabon, and which is once was a part of which then became Nigeria. So it's like I understand where I came from, and I don't want to bring my American values there. I want to bring back the idea of family, the idea that women are powerful, because in Africa, women are powerful. They're breadwinners, they're business owners. I saw more men taking care of kids and family and more women out in the marketplace. It was
Mm.
like a
Yeah. Yeah.
whole different mindset. And and the respect for parents. And yeah, does it have its BS like everywhere else in the world, and its violence and their yuck and its politics? Yes.
Right.
Yes. Has it been colonized? Yes. Does everyone want the straight hair that's being bought from China? Yes.
Yep.
It's like, but it's real. That's the difference is it's real, and they know who they are. They see themselves reflected back every day. We don't.
And it's funny you should say that, because I think Wakanda,
Right.
even though it's completely fake, is closer to a reality than people want to admit.
Absolutely.
Right? Because of
That's
everything
right.
you just said. Like, it's not like there's, just like you said, poor kids, unfed kids.
I just don't think there's verbanium, but yeah, there's
That,
you know,
right, that.
yeah, but there is that. There is that. There's the richness in the soil. There's a richness in the people. There's the idea of why should we let other, just like here. I mean, if you look at it, it has been colonized over and over. Africa has been. So it's like, in its different ways, and now it's kind of like, okay, we're Africa. But I think if we don't own who we are as Black people in the world, then we will allow history to repeat itself and happen on different continents. So we have to be very mindful in this day and age to own absolutely who we are, and I think that's one thing my dad would see in the world and want, is for us to know exactly who we are in a tangible way. And part of that is speaking our truth no matter what. You speak truth no matter what, even if people call you a liar. If it's truth, you continue to speak it. Eventually you will be heard. And that's what he did.
That was Rain Pryor, writer, director, author, singer, actress, and of course, the daughter of the late comedian Richard Pryor. We're going to spend the rest of this season exploring how humor and comedy can help us unpack race and racism. On our next episode, I talked to Dr. Lawrence Edwin Williams about how the passage of time lets us look back and laugh at the heartbreak of our past. I'm Michelle Tyreen Johnson. Thanks for listening to Race Unwrapped.
Race Unwrapped is produced by Michelle Tyreen Johnson for Louisville Public Media. Our senior producer is Laura Ellis. Audio engineering by Eric Matthews and me, Alex Biscardi. Music by Allison Cross. For more information, to contact us, or to support Race Unwrapped, visit lpm.org/raceunwrapped.
Support for LPM podcasts comes from the Eye Care Institute and Butchertown Clinical Trials, where they strive for diversity, equity, and inclusion within their staff, patients, and clinical trial participants. To learn more, visit butchertown.clinic.